We're going to go ahead and kick it off here. Welcome, everyone. Glad you're here. I'm Alex Rodriguez. I do R&D for the business process automation team here at Proven IT, and I'll be your host and moderator today. Little info about myself. I have a degree in computer science. I've been at Proven for almost 12 years now, and I've been working with AI since the first ChatGPT model released almost 3 years ago. We've got a nice little agenda for you today. Mark's going to cover a lot of ground from the pressures leaders are facing right now around AI to the real reasons that most organizations are stalling out on it, to what a day with Copilot actually looks like in practice. And then there's also a live Q&A block, and we'll run through some audience scenarios towards the end. And there's one thing I want to say before I hand it over to our presenter here is the conversations that we're having with business leaders right now are totally different than what they were even a year ago, right? The questions used to be, should we do something with AI? That question has already been answered, right? And the answer, by the way, is yes, you should be doing something with AI. And now the question is how to actually make it work. And that's where today's conversation is going to start. All right. All right, so let me introduce our presenter here, Mark Ellickson. Mark is Proven IT Senior Director of Digital Transformation and AI Strategy. He's been with Proven for over 16 years now, and during that time, he's worn many hats. He's a man of many talents. You guys are in good hands. Mark, go ahead and take it away.
All right, thank you, Alex. Thank you, everybody, for jumping on today. So what is the new reality for business leaders today? It depends who you ask, I guess, but AI is real. It's not the doom and gloom like Skynet, Terminator stuff. It is a tool that's going to be used at some point by everybody in somewhere. Even if they don't know they're using it, they're going to be using it, and that's happening a lot now. I think there's still a gap, and there's still a long way to go. We thought about throwing a bunch of stats up here. But as you know, stats are just stats, and the reality of this is that there's still a big gap on what people think AI is going to be used for and what it's actually going to be used for. And always, especially over my last almost 20 years in business, my real focus has always been about process improvements. How are we using the right tools that we have to get to where we want to get to more efficiently, more effectively with technology, and that's always been my real focus. So, when we talk about what's real, to me, there's a couple questions that I have leaders, talking about all the time. We know it's real. We know we have to do something because if we don't, we're going to fall behind. That's kind of the first statement they say. But then they say there's really, what are we going to do? What are we going to use? What's the product we're going to use? What's the model we're going to use? But ultimately, what are we going to use for the best functionality? How are we going to be secure? And how are we going to be cost effective? Those are the things that business leaders that I'm talking to are asking every day in a general sense. And that's where, when I turn it to how I try to explain it to people that are not, advanced or experts in AI, is that there's really two simple ways to break it down that I've done. There's a million subsections you can do within this, but the two simple ways to break down how AI is going to be used in business. I break it down in the first one being end user productivity, back office. And that's going to be, what do your employees use on a daily basis? As leaders, as owners, as directors, managers, whatever it is, you have employees that report to you or work within your departments. How are we going to make them more effective? How are we going to make them more effective in what they do on our everyday basis? And the crazy part is, like, some people are always thinking like, hey, we got to get our top leaders and directors and whatnot using AI in certain sense for this type of stuff, for the end user productivity. But in reality, it's a lot of times, the rest of the employees that are actually going to be able to have more an effect on their everyday life with AI, because a lot of times they are the ones doing repetitive type tasks, things that are data entry type tasks. There's not a lot of CEOs doing data entry into There's not a lot of C-level employees in general doing data entry into an application, taking data from one place and putting it into another, or even analyzing a spreadsheet, or analyzing documentation. In a lot of cases, the leadership get that type of information already kind of AI'd up for them. It just used to be done by a human. Now that human's going to be able to take that AI tool and make them more efficient with getting that information ready. So end user productivity, this is where I am maybe biased with Copilot, especially if you are a Microsoft shop. If you're using Microsoft, it just really makes sense to me in a lot of different ways, and I'm going to hit on that in just a second. Before that, I'm going to hit on the second way of breaking up the two different sides of AI. Is first one, end user productivity. What are people going to use on their everyday basis, daily tasks that they do? And then the second one is, how are we going to get into automating and having those agentic automatic tasks happening without a prompt or without someone asking it to happen? How are we going to have something looking at our data or looking into our customer databases or looking into our sales, looking into our inventory, looking at other factors that go into that, shipping, weather, or whatever else can go into all of those different things, and actually pull insights out without someone having to go say, what about this? We set those things that we know all the factors that go into those type of decisions, but right now someone has to go and look for those things, and a lot of times that just doesn't happen. Maybe because the juice isn't worth the squeeze, or just maybe because people don't have enough time in the day. There's a million other reasons as well, but that's where the real cool stuff starts to happen with AI in general. And we're not going to talk about that so much today. It's a separate kind of conversation, but in that scenario, if we were talking around those type of things, I'd probably talk about Copilot for 5 minutes out of the hour, because there'd be a bunch of other different reasons, and ultimately based on the scenario or what you're trying to do is what's going to dictate what the best model and what the best tool that you're using for that scenario or process is. So, just kind of closing that one out, why Copilot then? What makes Copilot the decision for, especially for that first scenario of the end user productivity? There's really only a couple options when it comes to what you're using for email and what you're using for your Office apps, like how you look at documentation, create things, draft things, whatever else. And that's typically Microsoft and Google for most businesses. And there's really three things that I'd like to point out of why I think it really makes it a really clear, easy decision of why Copilot is the decision for that office productivity. First, it's cost. The cost of Copilot is, in my opinion, the most effective cost for the bang for the buck of what you're getting out of it. $20 to $30 per user based on the size of your organization. There's not, if we think about the different competitive tools out there that even stand on the same level, just name two other ones, ChatGPT and Claude. Both of them are more expensive, and both of them throttle you on the amount of tokens that you get for a more expensive cost within the initial upfront cost. So right there, Copilot wins when it comes to cost. No one can argue that, in my opinion. Two, functionality. Just at a high level, I think within the Microsoft environment, the Microsoft 365 tenant, that's where Copilot is. So how could something else be more functional within that tenant than something that belongs to that tenant? And they were obviously able to identify pretty early on that Claude was what it was, and they made that agreement to integrate Claude right into Copilot to be able to use that, which is amazing. You wouldn't be amazed how many people that will have no idea of that yet, and even though they love Claude and hate Copilot, if that was the scenario there, but that's less and less now. The functionality just makes sense to me. Integrated within all your apps, SharePoint, OneDrive, where your files are, where your grounded data is, We can get a lot more advanced into data from applications and whatnot, but that's into that second scenario. And then the third one is security. So we got cost, functionality, security. My opinion, when it comes to office productivity, Copilot wins on all three against ChatGPT and Claude in the workplace if you're a Microsoft shop, especially when you bundle them all together for the bang for the buck of what you're getting for the cost, functionality, and because your Microsoft security that you already are making permissions and whatnot is the same security that manages Copilot. So you're not doing any type of multi-layered settings. And
All right. Okay. So here's section 2. Section 2 is probably where we're going to get a lot of head nodding, right? Like, oh yes, this makes sense. This is how I'm feeling. This is what we're seeing. We talked to a lot of business leaders, and the patterns that we're seeing, it's pretty consistent across the board. They're not skeptical about AI, and they're not opposed to having Copilot or Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT, whichever one. They just feel like they're kind of spinning their wheels trying to figure out a direction to go with it. Right. And this section is about why that happens, and it's rarely the technology. Right. Very good. So AI readiness comes down to 5 areas, really. Most organizations are stronger in some, lighter in others. The pillars are data governance, licensing, security posture, workflow maturity, and change management readiness. That last one is huge. No organization is going to nail all 5 out of the gate, but knowing where your gaps are is exactly what lets you move faster and more confidently. Right? The organizations that do the work up front are the ones that are going to be deploying in weeks, and to Mark's point, they're going to start seeing real productivity gains. All right, the ones that skip it are usually the ones that are calling us in a couple of months, asking for our help. Data governance is where most organizations underestimate the work, and ROT is usually why. And if you're not familiar with ROT, it stands for redundant, outdated, and trivial content. And you're guaranteed almost all SharePoint or file server environments, they're going to be full of it, right? There's 5 different versions of the same proposal template scattered across different SharePoint sites or shares. There's an HR policy from 3 years ago that hasn't been updated or got renamed something different. It never got archived. There's years of files that nobody's looked at, right, in months or sometimes even years. And individually, that stuff is just kind of clutter, just built out over the many years of the organization existing. But the problem is that Copilot doesn't know the difference, right, between a current policy document and a stale one, right? It's going to search across everything that the user has access to, and it's going to surface what it thinks is most relevant. So if you've got a noisy environment, right, your Copilot answers are going to be noisy as well. Right? And this is one of the first things that we look at when we do an assessment, because it's one of the fastest ways to improve the result quality before you even go live. Right? And more to Mark's point, on the Copilot side specifically, right, the guardrails are built in. And the setup is a lot more straightforward than you would expect. Right? Copilot is going to inherit your existing Microsoft 365 permissions. Any sensitivity labels that are assigned, any retention policies. It doesn't bypass any of that. It works within it. Things like data loss prevention or conditional access policies, those are more configuration steps. It's not a huge engineering project. Right? And then what the assessment actually does is it gives us a clear picture of the current posture, so you know what to tune before you go live. Copilot can surface the good and the bad. The whole point of the readiness work is making sure you're comfortable with what it finds. Right? It's not a reason to slow things down. It's really what makes the rollout sustainable. Okay. And then before I kind of move on a little bit, I'm hoping that some of this is hitting close to home for your organizations, right? Up on the screen is a free AI readiness assessment that we offer, and it's not a lengthy process here. It's a pretty targeted diagnostics. It's going to tell us across those 5 pillars that I mentioned before where the gaps are, where you are right now, and best of all, it's free, right? I'm not trying to sell you anything right now. You can just scan that QR code, fill it out. We'll get those results, and we can start having those conversations with the organizations.
All right. All right. So we're going to do one more section here before and try to have a little show you guys a couple things of how it could be used. This is the part here to where when we talk about the office productivity, that's what we're focusing on here. That's what we're looking at let's talk about those 5 core Microsoft apps: Teams, Outlook, PowerPoint, Excel, and Word. When I look at this, where it's helped me the most and where I didn't really, I guess I didn't think about how AI could help me at first until I started using it. And that's really where I starting to understand, wow, like all these different things. There's so many things that I would have never even attempted before. I would call myself not a super artistic person. So like when it does come to PowerPoint creations and things like that, unbelievable what it's been able to do for me. Things that I've been able to create that there would have been no even attempt 6 months or a year ago. And same thing with Excel. Everybody has that person, and everybody has old Excel workbooks out there that people made really cool for the organization for reporting purposes and whatnot. And there's only one person though that if anything ever changes, you got to hope that one person can go figure it out again if you need to make tweaks to it. And it's pretty much kind of stuck the way it is. You just deal with it. What you can get with Copilot in Excel like that, even in Word for writing or drafts, people look at it in email, all those things. So we look at some common areas that we talked about. Microsoft Teams, number 1 here. The meeting recap, I can't say enough about it. This is something that has always been a part of what I want to do after meetings, whether it be internal, whether they be with clients, prospects, whatever else. The way you were taught in my career, at least early on, was after every meeting you wanted to send some sort of LU. We called it letter of understanding. And when you had really good meetings, you made sure you sent the LU because you wanted to keep the thing going. You wanted to keep the talk track going. But how did we do that? If I have 3 or 4 meetings today, at the end of the day is when I went and what meetings did I have? I went and tried to gather my notes, gather my thoughts on each one of those meetings, and at minimum, it took me 20 minutes or so to send out each one of those LUs to those meetings at the end of the day. Make sure people are using it, because there's no way anybody can say that they could be as thorough and get the ideas and the insights that you're not even thinking about without this tool, because you only know what you know. People only know how to use the tool and what way they know how to use it. AI changes all of that for you. So these are some common examples, just to hit on a few of them there. That recap of a meeting is huge for me. Obviously, I don't have it on here for PowerPoint, but the PowerPoint one of me designing presentations is also huge for me, as well as working with Excel and getting insights and getting information out of a Excel workbook that I would have never thought of before. Make sure most common one I got out of the responses is going to be Excel. So that's the one I'm going to show you something live with in just a moment. But I would encourage everybody, if you don't have Copilot turned on, or if you do, you try to do, you got to do one of these every day. And this is just an idea here of a high level idea, morning, high stakes forecast and strategic planning. How are we going to use it in those areas? Midday, meeting overlaid summarizations, decision clarity. Afternoon, task management, email triage, follow-up automation, reports, insights, and next steps planning. So, like I was saying before, everybody's doing these things, but if you're getting information sent to you or documentation or things that you need to review, one of the big aha moment for me where I saw a big, shift in getting efficiencies out of AI was teeing things up for myself. So, hey, I got an email, I got a document sent to me. I know I'm going to review it, but I'm in the middle of doing 4 other things. Typically, I would just move on and come back to that later. And when I came back to whatever I was finished with that I was doing, I would, just kind of start from scratch. It'd take me a minute to get my bearings straight, all of that. Now I immediately drop that in. I immediately drop that into Copilot and have it start doing the thing. And I don't even watch it. I just go back to doing what I was doing before. So then when I come back to when I get time to come back to what I get to start that task, I'm already, on step 3 rather than still getting my bearings straight before I even start step 1. I think before you try to figure out anything on your own, if you're not putting it into Copilot and getting a head start on it, then you're missing, one of the easiest, most critical benefits to AI that you could possibly ever get. So we look at this, a day in a life of an executive. I've been able to do this and narrow it down for a lot of our clients and our, who we work with, and be able to assist them with, how are we going to find out what's important to us and get a good head start? What are we going to use? How are we going to start to adopt this? How are we going to get our people using it on a daily basis? We have all that to work with you on. It seems like most people on here, at least the people responding, have been using Copilot or using an AI tool. No one put they were using anything else out there. But this is just a quick example of an Excel of something that I've been using a lot. There's one simple prompt. I already kind of got it teed up here for you. So simple spreadsheet here, fake sales data, categories. This is kind of the raw data form. 2025, 2024 sales by product types, where they're at month. Raw data. This particular spreadsheet, it did not have this third tab. Just wanted to tee it up to time purposes. It was these two. I have been running every single, financial summaries or anything I get in Excel. One simple prompt that I use a lot, and is this: analyze this workbook, uncover meaningful interest, data insights, include the 3 most important insights, findings, or takeaways, including a visualization to help illustrate, clarify the findings. Next, ask me questions to clarify what I'm interested in learning, or suggest steps for deeper analysis. Insert the summary into a new sheet. So I literally clicked go when I put that prompt in there, and it's a saved prompt for me. And it did this. I clicked off. I left the screen. It was doing whatever I was doing. When I just came back to it, just like you saw me come back to it, this was all here. And it has my, what it found over here to the right. It also has some questions for a deeper analysis that I could, ask additional questions that I'll show you in a second. But it also made me my, my insights here. And to have this now to where we can look at, Insight 1, achieved the most profit, only 8% revenue growth. The deeper analysis of why later here. But this is gave me things that I have showed this to other organizations I know nothing about, and took their spreadsheet and gave it back to them. I know everybody I've shown it to has been surprised with it and been like, that's bringing up things that I wasn't even thinking about. And simple little aspect, and then from here, just like everything with, you can get into it and you can start to drill down, having it edit, having it do all this for you. I mean, just even if I was going to do that analysis there, even if it was going to be half as thorough as what this did, how long would it took me to, put all this numbers in here, do all this to actually make it, jive up with the raw data? It would have took a significant amount of time. And that took me 0 time. And this is where I started with reviewing the spreadsheet rather than raw data. You can get.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions that came in, Mark.
Yep.
I'm going to go ahead and take this first one because I kind of jumped the gun on it. Is Copilot able to scan new emails coming into Outlook and put new tasks in our task manager? In this case, it's Asana. And yeah, we can definitely build a Copilot agent that would scan your email, and then based on a trigger, if it matches it, it can generate a new task for you in Asana or any other kind of task management platform that you use. If there's a connector, we can tie into that. If not, we can always build a custom connection to it.
Super simple planner and task work, through Microsoft work great for that too, depending on how advanced your task management stuff is. That's why they have a different tool. But if planner would work for you, I would consider looking into that also.
All right, and we've got another one here. How does Copilot handle charges? Are there per workflow costs?
So, short answer on everything that you've seen today, end user productivity, using it within side of your 5 core Microsoft applications. That's one of the parts of where it sets it aside from Claude and whatnot. It's the $20 to $30, whatever it is, for your license per month, per user. That's all you pay. Go all day long and ask it prompts all day long. Never going to be charged anything additional. Everybody who has Claude and they use it at all, like the actual paid Claude, even the $35 one a month, so it's already more than what it is. If they use it, every single one of them will have the timer. They get to a certain point of the day, and Claude pops up and says you're out of tokens for the day. And that means either you got to go into the settings and you either got to pay. I've seen people up to $1,000 a month for one particular user that's writing code all day long and doing different things within Claude. And I've literally said, how could that be even what you're thinking about doing? When now, right from my Copilot screen, if you're still looking at my screen, I just added this another addition here, Claude 4.8 Opus. So now we have 2 Claude models. We have Chat GPT 5.5, and we do have other ones in other applications, but I can now use all these Claude models, and I would have no tokens being used. How could someone say that they should be? Now, maybe the guardrails, maybe some other aspects of that, but yeah. What was the second part of the question?
Are there per workflow costs?
So then
I think you kind of covered everything.
Now, the other side is how I brought up the 2 different sides of the simplicity of how I break out AI. There's kind of the end user productivity, and then there's kind of the behind the scenes agent type automation workflows and stuff. That's where we do still have to get into tokens, and we have to get into usage and how it's being used. And that's why anybody who says they know what model they're going to use, that just kind of tells me right off the bat that they don't really fully know what AI is yet, because when you get into those complex type of automation workflows, you should be using multiple models within the same workflow, because you should be using maybe a really cheap GPT 3.0 to go pull the data, and it costs half of a fraction of a penny every time that goes. And then when you want to do some real cool stuff with that data, maybe then you're using Claude that costs $1. But if you think you're using Claude for every time it goes and pulls the data, you're going to be spending $1 million to go, it's like the juice is never going to be worth the squeeze.
All right, and then the last question we have is there a way to save your favorite prompts so you don't have to type them out each time?
Yeah. So right from the chat screen, you can click on a prompt, you can schedule it, you can save it, you could actually tell Copilot right after you do the prompt, I can make this one of my saved prompts that I can use every other time that something else like You can talk to your Copilot and tell it, hey, remember that I like that. I like what you just did. Always do that every time I ask a question along those lines, so you don't have to do it every time. That's the difference of an agent. And I've kind of ended on that note. And that's a difference of what a good prompt and what, a prompt that people just put the bare minimum and try to just build on it, build on it, and build on it, which that works as well. But a good agent is just like the scenario of how do we get the right instructions for the job, the right SOPs, the right processes, procedures, protocols, all of that. So where companies, a lot of times, people have SOPs everywhere. How much thought went into those SOPs in the past? From what I see a lot of times, and this is not for everybody and not for every process, it was very little time and management went into getting like that prompt really good, or that protocol really good, or that procedure really good, because people didn't use it. They just did their job, how they do their job. It's the same way, like if I asked you how to make the peanut butter and jelly analogy, how do you do that? You're going to say, hey, I grabbed the bread out the cabinet, I grabbed 2 pieces, throw peanut butter on one, throw jelly on the other, put them together, and I eat it. You may do that. You set up an agent and you told it that's what the process was. And the first sandwich you got was 2 end pieces. It had a ton of peanut butter and a little speckle of jelly. And that's the sandwich you got at the end of it. You'd be like, oh my God, I got to tell it better. And first of all, tell it to grab from the middle of tell it to take, more detail. Let's tell it to take the twist tie off. Let's tell it to grab from the middle of the bread, never take the end pieces, no matter what. Put an even amount of peanut butter and an even amount of jelly on both sides. And that's how you're refining your instructions to make them be the best they can be eventually.
Give everybody a chance to scan that code. And again, it is in the Q&A, a direct link to it. Well, I think you said it perfectly, right? If you guys have any other questions for us, feel free to reach out to myself or Mark directly. We're not hard to find. And please take advantage of the free AI assessment. Doesn't cost a penny. It'll give you good insight